Good evening, friends. One night a year, people can do whatever they want without consequences. We decided to make a video. I hope you enjoy the Cold Nights Halloween special.
Hey there, friends. It's Brandon from JustTheGems. Thanks to Jay from Cold Nights Gaming for having me on again to talk about some more spooky games. Now, any conversation about the scariest horror games has to include the Dead Space series. I don't even know if I would go so far as to say that it's my favorite horror series, but in terms of scares, in terms of the horror aspect of the horror game, Dead Space is the cream of the crop for me. It really is one of the best interpretations of science fiction horror I've seen in a video game. So Dead Space, if you're not familiar, is equal parts Aliens and Event Horizon, and a little bit of Xenosaga thrown in there too. If you know, you know. To sum it up, Dead Space is about Isaac, who's an engineer aboard a ship. He receives a distress call from his girlfriend, Nicole, who says something horrible's happened, he's got to come. So he finds Nicole's ship. It's seemingly abandoned, drifting in space. And on board the ship, there is an alien artifact known as the Marker. So the Marker is this mysterious thing that seems to generate limitless energy. And of course, the Earth government sees that as a way to solve the energy crisis. But because this game is called Dead Space and not Captain Fuzzy's Energy Adventure, things go wrong. So the Marker causes humans to hallucinate and lose their minds, and it reanimates the dead into something that the game refers to as necromorphs. So these are these horrible abominations that crawl around and want to kill you, because of course, and your best means of defense is shooting off their limbs with these specialized guns. So obviously, as you can see, the game is just dripping with this dark and oppressive science fiction-y atmosphere. And on top of all of that, the reason that I wanted to talk about Dead Space when the idea of discussing the scariest games of all time came up, there's one scene in particular, and it's the last scene of the game. So look, if you're planning on playing Dead Space, maybe fast forward 20 seconds here. But this last scene just scared the crap out of me. And I'm curious if it still holds up today, so let's take a look. Whew. Yeah, that's still pretty scary. Anyway, that's gonna do it for me. Take it away.
You know, they say that in space, no one can hear you scream. Great video, Brandon. But duct tape has the same effect here.
Hey everybody, my name is Philip. I currently go by the Jokester on social media and YouTube. I want to thank Cold Nights Gaming for allowing me to be a part of this collaboration. So I'm going to cheat in answering this question. Instead of saying the scariest game I ever played, I want to talk about the scariest game I ever experienced. When I was younger, didn't really have a lot of money for video games, so my uncle would come down and he would bring new games for me to play and try. And one time on his visit, he brought a little game called Resident Evil 2. That would be 4. I got my first taste of survival horror. And let's just say, I did not take well to it. Yeah. Let's talk about that. By 1998, the world had already experienced survival horror with the first title, Resident Evil. But being a sheltered kid that didn't have a lot of money for video games, I had no idea what Resident Evil was. For all I knew, this was a game about a cool cop that punched bad guys and collected donuts. I still thought games were innocent and sweet, like Mario, Spyro, Crash Bandicoot. But the title of the game, the creepy cover art, the ominous sounds and spooky music, I was about to walk through a door of true terror that would give me nightmares and make me crap my pants. Literally.
Oh man. What happened?
Had too many fish tacos and potato bean burritos from Taco Bell. I'm about to blast my Mountain Dew. Oh!
Hang in there.
Jokes aside, I remember the commercials for the game would come on late at night and scare me. They used live action actors dressed up like zombies. The music of the trailer was really intense, and the voiceovers would chill you to the bone. Especially that final line, "Everyone's gonna die." And then that zombie just pierces into your soul. If that didn't make you wet your bed and shiver under the covers, I don't know what would.
Something else will.
Everyone's gonna die!
One of the most scariest and creative things about the earlier Resident Evil games was load screens disguised as doors. If it was your first time playing, you never knew what was beyond it, adding to the tension. Would it be a zombie or something far worse? A much needed save room and a healing herb around the corner? Or maybe a terrifying licker crawling on the ceiling, ready to strike? It was such an iconic feature that when it came to the remastered HD ports for Zero and Re1 Remake, they had an option to remove them, but they kept them in because they knew people loved them and it really added to the spooky factor. Part of me wishes the remakes 2 and 3, along with the latest games in the series and the most anticipated Resident Evil 4 remake, still have this as a feature. Resident Evil is a series that set the bar for survival horror, with brain-teasing puzzles, crazy enemy and bosses, fantastic set-piece locations, and music that would make you wet the bed. It truly stood the test of time, and why the series has survived and continues to go strong to this day. To young 11-year-old me, it will always be one of the most terrifying things in my childhood, next to Chucky. Because let's face it, you don't mess with the Chuck.
Great video, Mr. J. I hear that original copies of Resident Evil 2 are often scalped.
Jay, thanks so much for having me on your channel. My name's Alie and I have my own YouTube channel called AlieInWonderland. Jay asked me to talk about a horror game, and honestly I really don't have any experience. I don't really like the genre because I'm a chicken and I'm always afraid of those type of games. But for you, Jay, I will try. The game today that I'm going to talk about is Inside. Inside is a 2D platformer with a very eerie, very terrifying environment. It's about a boy who's running away from something, and these young kids in masks are trying to catch him with really scary Rottweilers, I guess. And whenever I see a dog, it kind of reminds me of Resident Evil. So it's a game that I definitely think I was more frightened from the dogs than anything. But the noises and the sound effects of this game and how it is portrayed, it does get you feeling a little bit like, I guess, terrified with every level that you advance. So a game that makes me feel like this, I feel like it's a great choice for Spooktober. These games are kind of similar to Little Nightmares and Dark, so if you're a fan of that kind of type of games, this is the game for you. This game has a very interesting take on post-apocalyptic world settings, and so if you're interested in that, this is also something that you would want to play. I really enjoyed the game. I thought it was very scary, very terrifying. I didn't like that there was no dialogue and there was no explanation, but I think that's very interesting because I'm sure on Reddit there are forums where people talk about their take on the game. And I think at the end of the day, it's like looking at a painting, right? Not everyone has the same answers. So if you can come up with different theories, this is what makes the game really interesting. A game where people still talk about it and wonder what was going on, right? So if you're interested in eerie, terrifying environments with sound effects and beautiful graphics, this game would be a perfect addition to Spooktober. Let me know if you pick it up. And Jay, thanks so much for having me on your channel. Bye!
Great video, Alie. Thanks so much. Now it's time for some home invasion selfies. 'Cause I'm inside your house. What a lovely couple. Next video.
Hi, this is Emily over at Orbalology, and I'm going to admit that I do not have a lot of experience in the horror genre. However, I think there are a lot of games, especially RPGs, out there that have a lot of horror elements that they integrate into their stories. So the game I'll be sharing today is The Witcher 3. And so The Witcher's lore has a lot of very creepy creatures with some very disturbing backstories. For example, we have the botchlings who manifest from improper burials of unwanted or stillborn children. And because of their resentment, they go and prey on pregnant women. And there are a lot of creatures that just look downright creepy without the disturbing backstory, such as the three crones that have body parts of children, and the Leshens are also very creepy. But I think the side missions are really where you find the most disturbing horror-like elements in The Witcher 3. One of the quests that has stuck with me is the Tower of Mice. So this is where Geralt goes onto this abandoned island that has this tower, and he has to explore and use a magic lamp to communicate to ghosts to see what really happened on that island. And while The Witcher 3 isn't on par with a lot of games in the horror genre, I think they do a good job with creating a very dark atmosphere with the music and the sceneries. And so when you explore that tower, you eventually stumble upon this room of this laboratory where this ghost of Annabeth manifests and kind of tells you her very disturbing tale of what went on. So I'll stop there to avoid any spoilers, because I think one of the true experiences in Witcher 3 is just feeling that weight of your decision making, however limited it is, and navigating the Witcher 3 world and trying to decide who the real monsters are.
Great video, Emily. One thing I don't like about Witcher 3 is the lack of a stealth mechanic. Boo. Hey folks, Jay from Cold Nights here. Today's game that I'm going to be covering is Corpse Party. The game was originally made on a version of RPG Maker way back in 1996, and it's had many re-releases. Most of us are probably most familiar with the PSP one, or the PC release. I know I first played it on PSP, but it definitely, for a lot of us in North America, introduced us for the first time to some of the real chilling and horrifying images that we end up seeing in games like Doki Doki Literature Club. So without further ado, let's get into a couple of the more spooky scenes in the game. All right, so we open with the classmates performing a mystic ritual, which is always a wonderful idea, of course. The ritual is supposed to ensure that they're going to remain friends forever, but in later games and later in the story you find out that the ritual was purposely misrepresented to them, and they will perform it wrong and in fact curse themselves. That's how these things always go. So here in a moment we'll see the little Sachiko paper doll that they use in the ritual. They were supposed to chant the chant 9 times plus one more time for Sachiko. That last part was left out, so the ritual does fail and curses them all to be transported to sort of an alternate dimension in a hellish school, Heavenly Host Elementary, that once in the past hosted terrible murders and tragedies. And that's where the story will begin. The story has pretty basic exploration, a lot like Sweet Home or your area exploration in a role-playing game. There's a lot of gruesome and disturbing things you'll find as you make your way through the schools. There's also a lot of innuendo and little sexual jokes as well. There is a couple boss encounters where you have to use items to solve the puzzles of the bosses. The game also got a film release in 2015, and also was adapted to a manga as well, which I have not read but would like to. Now we are getting to the meat and potatoes of the terror. You have to understand that in 2010, when this was released on the Vita, we had not encountered things like this. So here you see one of the girls discovering her best friend who has hung herself. This imagery was simply something that we had not come across, so it definitely had a shock factor to it that we hadn't seen in things like Doki Doki Literature Club or Silent Hill or Resident Evil. And then here we see the picture of the murdered children from the original Heavenly Hosts elementary school. Again, it's not overly graphic, but it's the first time we've seen children presented in this way in really any game in pop culture. So definitely maintains the shock and scare factor long after and sets the tone for future games. In conclusion, we all wear masks sometimes to hide who we are. Don't be afraid to be your true self, and stay creepy.